just for the YouTube channel, this is the Oregon Carvers Guild and the Carving Special Interest Group of the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers in Portland, Oregon, and we're doing our monthly Zoom meeting. The title of this one is called Finding Inspiration, which is a show and tell. Seeing ideas and what other people have done to either inspire us or scare us. I'm not quite sure which. Some of these things I look at are so awesome that I just wonder if they're really done by human beings, but they are. For those of you that are helping with the gathering of the guild, thank you very much. It's only 12 days away or so. For those of you that are helping to load in, it's in a different hall, so we have different docs to work with. So we'll get set up on Wednesday, Thursday, and we're fully staffed. So Lynn, thank you for taking one of the last slots today on Friday night. And for those of you that are demonstrators, that is fantastic. Those of you that know my wife, Sherry, she's had cancer for the last year. She's done really well for chemo. And she had a bad patch a couple of weeks ago and didn't, probably may or may not be cancer related, but she ended up in ER last Thursday and still in the hospital. And my daughter is here, adult daughter from Tacoma. So she's got the evening shift and I had the day shift, but she'll probably be there for several more days. And I just say that as an excuse because I've had a whole lot of slides that I had wanted to put in from the various shows that I didn't have time to do. And if anybody wants to dive down into any of the three shows that we have at the end, let me know. We'll try to get some of those posted on the website. They're quite interesting. So Wayne, I'm going to cue you up, and you ready to go. I'll share my screen if you're ready. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So you should be able to share your screen.
Okay.
Wayne, yeah, why don't you just also introduce yourself a bit and about your presence at the gathering of the guild, just as a way to both give context and a little bit of advertising.
Okay. All right. First, Larry, I want to say, my heart goes out to you for your wife, Sherry, and your troubles there. So glad your daughter's here, and
Yeah.
it's good to know so that we don't ask too much of you during this
Oh,
time.
no, ask away. I can always say no.
Good. So yeah, hi, my name is Wayne Harrell. I've been with the Guild for a year and a half. I've been a writer and a communications guy for decades, and I've always loved wood. I'm a terrible finish carpenter though. I can't put right angles together, but I really like carving and getting into wood. And so, excuse me. So I started doing that a couple years ago, and along the way, I've been making stuff, and I've actually gone to a few shows. I was at Gathering of the Guilds last year. I'll be there again this year. And I've gone to 3 or 4 other shows in Corvallis, Seattle, and sold stuff. And that's a whole new venture, and people like it. So um, I'm going to keep going. And so I just wanted to share what I do, how I got inspired, and happy. And I'm sorry I have to leave because I'm going to go see a jazz concert tonight. So, but I'll be here for as long as I can. And I'll be at the guild, so you're welcome to come by, stop by, and see my booth and chat with me. And so now I will share the screen. Do the magic. There we go. And let's see. Oh, I get to. Sorry, I gave you the present review, present show. I'm almost there. Okay, there we go. So for me, the first inspiration, having been born and raised, grown up here in Oregon, was Northwest Coast art. I just love and am enthralled and amazed by the art of Native Americans along the coast. It's always resonated with me. I always am amazed and fascinated by it. So that's where I started. I just got 3 cheap chisels, hardware chisels, and whacked away and created this sculpture on the right. This is the very first thing I ever did. It was just a 6-inch maple log, fell down at mom and dad's house. It's about 30 inches long. And so I just kind of came up with that design, trying to follow Native American style, but be a little bit more, still myself within that. And then I torched it, and that's why it's all dark and black, and then scraped away some of the char to reveal the higher areas. So Native American, that was my first first inspiration. And then since then, being a word guy, I'm not a graphic artist. I just look to other styles that really call to me. And for me, 20th century art styles in particular, some of the more abstract stuff, I like it. And I also look at some of that and think, I think I could do that in wood. I could execute that in wood. So Pete Mondrian, the white, the real famous white squares and black lines, that was kind of the first inspiration I followed. And then this is Vasily Kandinsky and circles. I started doing that. Rothko, I always love Rothko, and I just recently tried to make some Rothko in wood. And then Cubism is an area that I never really liked as an art, but after I did these three styles, I'm looking at Cubism thinking, I think maybe I could do that in wood. I'm gonna give it a try. So Mondrian is the first one, and again, what I did here is I was just trying to follow the rules. All the lines, you can see the black lines. There's never any exposed corners. They always intersect somewhere. And so following those rules, I didn't do these simple ones over here. I actually did a really big multnomah falls, and then this thing on a cherry plank. It's about 5 feet wide, and on top here, and it is kind of my interpretation of Trillium Lake. So there's the lake shoreline, here's Mount Hood in the top and reflection below, and the woods on both sides, left and right. But again, just using a basic outline of Mount Hood and then trying to illustrate that using the Mondrian rules. And then I did the simpler things that are on the left, just, much more kind of pure Mondrian. But again, where he has color blocks, I did differently by depths and hollows and all that. On the right is an interpretation of Multnomah Falls, and then down below is another thing I did at for Seattle. It's Mount Rainier over a lake. It was very intentional landscape. And then the people that bought it, they said, the place where we want to put this is tall and narrow. Can you change the wire so it hangs vertically? I said, yes, I'd be happy to. Though I really wanted to say, no for you. Kandinsky is another artist from the early 20s, 10s and 20s that I really like. That center one is his. And then you can see in the upper left corner, I pretty much did a copy. I started off doing the same lines and that layout. And then I started to vary already within that. The black thing down below is something that I did too. And again, I have a real limited garage. I've got, some hand tools, power tools, a whole drill motor. I mean, a drill press. I wish I had a bandsaw, but I don't. But I do have hole saws. And so I was like, okay, what can I do with hole saws? And so the lower black one, and then obviously 3 of these are hole saws, and then routers. I use routers a lot for different levels and to do all those straight lines too. The top right one is actually used a circular saw for the lines, and then again, hole saws to gouge that. And then the one down below on the bottom right was a big old cookie, 3-foot cookie that was kind of in the junk sale pile at Gobi Walnut, where I often go and look through their rummage bins for the rejected stuff. And that one was a lot of fun to apply the circle concept to that, and then different textures and layers and finishes on that one. And that was a commission for a friend of mine wanted that. And he said, don't put a hanger on it. He wanted to look at it for a while to figure out which way to orient it. And I think it's in their house this way, but I'm not sure. And then Rothko. So Rothko's, he's from Oregon. He was from Russia, and then he grew up in Portland, and then he went to New York. And some people love him, some people don't. I really do. To me, they're kind of meditative. And so I thought, I'm gonna try it in wood. And I had this is an oak board about 30 inches, 36 inches by 13 inches. And I did 3 mini Rothkos on it, as you can see. I just kind of banged off 3 at once just to try a whole bunch of different things. And again, this is router to do the texture, the levels. And then I think mostly router for the kind of the wavy texture within that too. Then Cubism was, like I said, I was looking at, I think I could do that. And so that's my granddaughter in the bottom right. I have tons of pictures of her because she's so cute. And then I just put together 3 different versions, trying to align it by her mouth. And then that gave me some lines and structure for a piece of maple I had. And then just trying to get the major elements, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the hair, the cheek, the forehead. And I really like the result. This is the only one I've done so far, but I would like to do more of this kind of when I have time to mess around. And then, of course, Leroy Setzel, I didn't know about Setzel. The first some of those Mondrian stuff I did, people said, more than one person said, that looks like a Setzel. And I was like, who? And I looked them up. I was like, oh my gosh, I see what people are talking about. And so I kind of went on a crash course and studied up on Leroy and Monica Setzel and their amazing and beautiful work. And and then I actually tried to do more intentional Setzel style things. So moving left to right, that's kind of the sequence of how I did things. The first one on the left was very much just trying to be like a Leroy, you know, put a grid in and then carve some random but unique or aligned textures. And then after that, I started to really focus on the grain to try to always honor the grain, which I'm not sure that Mr. Setzel or Monica emphasized that as much. But the middle two, I was really trying to still follow the grain as I also followed the grid pattern. And then the one on the far right, you know, after a while you get bored, you just got to start doing other things. So I did more circles and textures within that. And the one on the far right, I entered it in the state fair last year, and my great aunt Gertrude always would win blue ribbons for her canned peaches and caramels, and she's still the champ in the family. But I got a second place ribbon for that, so that was fun. So, like I said, it's been a new adventure. This is just within a few years. Huge thanks to Larry and the Guild for coaching me on gouges, how to use gouges, and how to carve within that. So I use gouges a lot too, gouges and hand tools. And for me, inspiration-wise, that's why I go. I look at other things that I like, and then I think, how could I do that in this new medium? And again, my name is Wayne Harrell. That's my email there if you want to talk later, and I'll be at the Guild if you'd like to chat in person. Any questions that I can answer?
Are your pieces glued on a backer board?
Oh, no. Every piece is a single piece of wood. That's kind of one of my things I try to do. So they're not laminated. They're not pieced together.
Wayne, I'm just very impressed by how prolific you've been as a relatively new carver. Thank you very much. It's very inspiring.
Thank you. It's and I have to confess, I've been doing this full time too. It's been my day job. It's not like I go make money and then I come home and dink around. So I have to thank my wife too for maintaining the benefits and giving me the freedom to do this.
And Wayne, on the piece, the Setzel slide, the one on the right where it had big circles, was that using a router? And how did you get such good?
Yeah, that was a router, and I think that was just a router. So this one here that's the one you're thinking of, Larry?
No, the last one, the very last slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. Back to where it was at the beginning. Yes, that was a router. Yeah, so I would, I have a jig. I made a jig out of plexiglass, and I drilled a bunch of holes from the center at inch intervals. And so I put a nail in the center of the circle and then use that to cut my larger diameters. The last two, I actually had to use like a garbage can lid just to get a really wide circumference. So I'd kind of I'd use something else I've got really good at using routers against lines, and I'm really comfortable with routers now and still have all my fingers. And, but it took a while, and I've got a collection of routers that help me in bits.
And how long have you been carving altogether?
Maybe 2.5 years.
Okay.
3 years.
That's pretty humbling. This is really spectacular, Wayne.
So thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you at the gathering of the guilds. Why don't you stop sharing, and then we'll see if there are any other questions.
Okay.
We have a small enough group, we should be able to see. And I will remove the spotlight. There we go. Any questions for Wayne? Okay. There we go. I will start the slide deck. Hang on a minute. I don't think Clark is here. I can't see now the participant list. Clark, if you're here, could you shout out? So Clark is in both clubs. He's in the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers and the Carvers Guild. And he likes making boxes. A lot of us like making boxes, but what may not be obvious with this example that he had is he's using Masa Natani's technique of enhancing the grain. I don't know what the wood is. He rattled it off when he took this picture. This picture was taken during the photography session that we had for the carving SIG. And you see a little bit more of the wavy pattern. So it takes really straightforward, simple wood and enhances it using that texturing technique. Sherry Cox was at and will be at the Gathering of the Guilds in our booth. She's a carver living on the far side of Clackamas County. She has pioneered, she's been carving about 6 years, she said. And she did a video presentation, she did a presentation to the Salem Club a few weeks ago. And I videotaped that. And if anybody wants to watch her 38-minute video, let me know. I excerpted some of those. The style is deep relief. She uses basswood exclusively. It's very fragile, and it's got stained glass behind most of them, particularly the bigger panels. And this particular design, she's in Boise for the Idaho show this past weekend, and she won best of show for her division, and she got a blue ribbon for it. There's only 2 attachment points for this floral pattern, one on the lower left and one on the upper right. So it's very fragile. And so the question is, how does she do that, right, without making it fall apart? And she refuses to use glue. So she said it's either perfect or it's firewood. Nothing in between. They're I would call them lightly painted, but it's not heavily painted. This slide is not going to be obvious for you, so let me just kind of walk you through it. These are screen grabs. The one on the left is the remains of the scroll sawed out pattern. So the black part of that is the part that will be carved. This is then the remainder of it, and she struggled a lot, but she came up with her own process for then building support infrastructure to allow her to carve it. The second picture from the left shows a bandsaw ripping that piece of scroll saw blank in half. You can kind of imagine. The third slide, kind of slid down a little bit, she'll take that half thick piece, and she'll cut it into like jigsaw puzzle pieces. So and then she will fit that piece right back in place where she jigsawed it out. And eventually she'll get all the pieces back into the where she's carving. And that will provide all the support she needs for being able to do the carving on that piece. Your screen might be blocked on the right side. When the right side is a reverse image, which then when she turns it over, after she carves the front side image, she carves the back side out and does the undercutting for that. And all the infrastructure provides the scaffolding for being able to do that. Her last step is to hand carve out a little recess on the back for the stained glass. And she said she spends probably as much time finding and working with the stained glass as she does with the wood, although I'm not sure if that's exactly true. But she spends a lot of time trying to match the color of the glass and doing it. This will be a little bit better detail. The one on the right is no, that's the front side. That's again the front side. This is the piece that she had in the Gathering of the Guilds last year, and it will be in there this year again. It's just really stunning. In this one, there's only one support piece, and I don't know for sure whether the stained glass is providing the backing for the duck itself, because there's only one attachment point, and otherwise, well, there's 2, I guess, at the bottom. Maybe that would do it. I just think it's a stunning piece. The Gathering of the Guild selected this particular piece in that photograph to use for the promotional. She likes carving what she likes. I asked her what she likes to carve. She said, well, whatever floats my boat, and it's usually floral, but sometimes nature scenes. She likes sailing ships. She said the guys that buy her stuff tend to like ships more than they like flowers, but we can't always predict. But this was a favorite one. This is a fuzzy one, and I apologize for it, but it's all basswood. It's all one piece.
Hmm.
And she spent a lot of time on finishing. And the entire finishing was using brie wax. I think she said she uses 3 or 4 different colors of brie wax, and she uses a small little melter to kind of melt it so she can paint it on. So the tree is whatever the dark brie wax is, and provides that colorization, and then she can mix and match. I haven't used brie wax. Nora Hall, that was one of her go-to finishes for clear coating that we talked about at the last meeting. But she'll dilute the colors in order to get the shades, and you can look at the barn roof and kind of get a sense of how that might happen. This is not obvious, but this is a small floral piece. It's fuzzy because I did a screen grab, but she'll have a number of these at the gathering of the guild. They're relatively small, not stained glass. She's selling the things for, I think, $200 or $300 for the bigger ones, but these should are sort of in the 35, 45 range. So she can crank these things out really pretty fast. I don't know, someone must be routing the frame, but I don't know for sure how she does it. She has a dowel pin at the bottom for packaging, and people buy them, they glue it up, get it positioned at a few degree angle, and puts them together.
Mhm.
I won't be able to answer any questions probably, but she will be at Gathering the Guilds. She'll be one of the demonstrators on Sunday afternoon, and so you'll be able to do that, and she'll be demonstrating. This will be her demo topic. Jerry Boone. So I didn't give you guys the heads up. So Jerry, you're up next, and then I have one slide for Mesa, and then Joanne, you'll be up after Jerry. So Jerry, I'll just sort of show you the sequence. This is the slides that you had. So once you kind of walk through the verbalization that you had for the individual pieces.
Okay, well, this obviously is, relief in basswood. And the story behind this one is when we first moved to Oregon, we lived out in Eastern Oregon. And on one of my assignments, on occasionally, I would end up by going, let's say, to the Dufur area. And this house was on a field all by itself in Dufur. It was allegedly the most photographed building in the entire county, and I can believe it. It was very, very picturesque, a beautiful old place. Unfortunately, about 5 or 6 years ago, it got caught up in one of the huge range fires and was just basically reduced to ashes. And I just kind of felt, yes, I sort of felt the loss. And I wanted to do something to kind of preserve that place, at least in my memory. And because the house was so well photographed, I was able to go online and find, hundreds of pictures of the thing. And this is the one I took. It's the color on the picture here doesn't really show. It's actually a much more yellowish patina. And we have it here in what we affectionately call our library. And in the summertime, as the sun goes down, it casts just beautiful shadows across the thing, and it just kind of comes alive. It's one of my favorite pieces.
It's a pretty big piece. About
Well,
how big is it, Jerry?
Excuse me?
About how big is it?
Oh, I'm going to guess maybe 12 by 20.
Hmm.
How deep is the relief?
The wood itself was about 1.25 inches. And so in some areas, it's down probably 3/4 of an inch at least.
And you had this at the Gathering of the Guilds last year?
Um,
Was this the
I-
one you had?
Maybe. I don't recall. Well, I mean, if you
Well-
think it was, if you think it was there, then it probably
It
was.
was there. It was there. Okay, I think
Okay.
it was.
All right. The story behind this one here, a number of years ago, I was out in the shop in Arizona, working on something or another, and I had I the song "The Boxer" came up, written by Paul Simon, and I was struck by the words, his opening words to "The Boxer." And I stopped it and I played it again and I played it again. I just said, gosh, you know, that just really kind of reflects the nation today. And I wanted to do something. And it took me a little bit of time to figure out exactly how I wanted to go and use the words. And this is eventually what I came up with. It took a lot longer than it probably should have. Each of the 50 stars are carved in there. You know, that just took, I mean, it was just mind-numbing, dull, meticulous work. But you know, overall, you know, I was real happy with it. We hang it up on the side of my carving shed in Arizona, where you get some footpaths. There's some foot traffic, and every now and again somebody will stop and look at it. And what I find interesting is you know, if I'm out there and they look at it, it'll start a conversation. And what I find intriguing is how two people can read those words by Paul Simon, and depending upon their personal outlook, interpret it totally different. Which, you know, I guess is a tribute to Simon as a songwriter.
So are we looking at metal grommets on the left edge?
Yeah, I wanted it to look, you know, like a flag. And so I drilled some holes out and put some metal grommets in there just so it indeed did look more like a flag.
Yeah.
Okay, this is one, my wife and I were in Italy about maybe close to 10 years or so ago. And you know, if you've never been to Italy, you know, you walk around with your with your jaw open, looking at the carvings and the art that's there. And in all of it, you know, one of the things that struck me the most was the picture on the right side. This was a column that had been done, you know, thousands of years ago, by I'm going to guess maybe, you know, a novice stonemason, and it had fallen in the Roman Forum. And so, you know, thousands of years, the thing is still there and it's still beautiful. And I stopped and I kind of looked at it, admired it. I actually ran my hand over the thing and just sort of felt the work that this person had done, and took some photos of it and decided, you know, I wanted to do it in wood. And I've done it in, I think, 4 different times, and I never have been 100% happy with what I've ended up with yet. The picture on the left is the flower done in a wood called a roko, which is a West African wood that's revered by the natives there. It's not a particularly protected wood, but yet it's considered something of a sacred wood, in that it's not uncommon for the tree fellers to go and basically say a prayer to the tree before they bring it down. I mean, it's something that's you know, they consider it to be sort of an honor to have that tree. I'm still not happy with any of the ones that I've done, and I'm going to try it one more time. My plan now is to do it in basswood and probably find a way to go and finish it so it more replicates the rock look of the original. I'm just going to keep hacking away at it till I get it right.
Yeah. Or try stone. Okay.
Yeah, that's another version. That was one of the earlier versions.
Yeah. And here you are with the cottage.
Okay. the carving cottage, I did about 3 years ago. Some of you may have seen a carving that I did about 5 or 6 years ago called Nanny D. She was the figurehead that's on the clipper ship, the Cutty Sark. And I wanted to go and find a way to go and illustrate what it would be like for a carver in that era to be working. My original idea was just to do a relief carving looking through a window at a carver at work. And I played around with a bunch of different designs and nothing really worked. And so I ended up instead building this little cottage with the carver inside, working on a miniature of a ship's figurehead and adding we got a pile of wood, a workbench. Down in the lower left-hand corner was a primitive bandsaw, a shelf, fireplace. This one here was kind of a joint effort because it was done the first year of COVID, and I would work on the piece, bring it in the house, set it on the dining room table, and my wife and I would kind of look at it, and she would say, "Well, you got a fireplace, it's got to have a broom and a dustpan." All right, so then I need a broom and a dustpan, and it was a lot of just the little details, and it was not, if you look at it, there's nothing in this carving that was particularly difficult to do. I mean, there isn't anything that you just say, wow, that must have been really complicated. It was an awful lot of just, basic yeoman work carving that went together as a package and was very successful. 2 years ago at the Mesa show, it won the Chairman's Award, and then later on, it won the People's Choice Award as the most popular carving in the show.
Yeah. That's great. Let's see.
Oh, look at that.
Okay, before I go, let's go back. Is there any questions for Jerry at all? Feel free to.
Yes, the drill on the bench there, am I looking at a piece of metal that looks like a pin that's been bent and then wood around it? Or-
That was, and actually, although you can't see them, on the left-hand side, there's some clamps. And
Yeah.
basically, there was just a piece of brass that I went down to the hardware store, found some brass, bent it up, and then played around building the handles and the bit for it.
And the handle on the vise on the bench, which is better seen on the previous picture, I think. Is that glued on?
Yes. It is not a working vise.
Yeah.
And what's on the vise, what's in the vise is the arm and the hand for the figurehead.
Yeah. Great job. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Okay, thank you, Jerry.
I was actually
let me
curious
get-
on the bricks. Sorry.
what's
How are the bricks done?
Oh,
Oh,
Jerry, how are the bricks done?
again, it was, basically basswood that I
Okay.
went in and just did some really deep carving. Again, the picture itself doesn't show some of the color. After I carved them, I went ahead and sealed them and then went back in with some basically Minwax 209, which I use as sort of a carrier for color, and I mixed a little brown, a little black, a little gray, and went in and made the bricks more realistic looking.
Okay.
And the same with the window frames, I guess. Is that how you treated those?
No, the window frames are actually out of butternuts.
Oh,
So they were, and the window frame's another one, you look at them, you say, well, how hard could that be? Well, try to do them and you'll find out. There was a third or fourth iteration until I finally got one that, it got a pair that fit. and look decent. It would be better if, if I had cut the holes a little more square and a little more even, but it was, an 1860s cottage, and it had worn and things had shifted a bit. That was my excuse.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Any other questions for Jerry? I'm going to show one slide for Mesa, and then Joanne, you'll be up next, and then after that will be Terry. And I was over at Masa's house. Masa Natani is an expert Japanese wood carver, been here since the mid-80s. Grew up in northern Japan, in Hokkaido. He's an Ainu native member. He did not carve this. He was at some show in Long Beach, California, and he was invited to, I think, be a part of a carving project. And the guy he was with, or assigned to work with, was this guy who he couldn't remember who it was. This is a shoe that you look at it, it's just leather, right? It's not leather. It's just a carved, finished piece. And it's just so stunning. He keeps that as a reminder on his bookshelf, display case in his shop. And I got various views of this thing, but the level of detail and the realism of that is, I think, just is really stunning. So I thought I would throw that in.
Please don't tell me that those shoelaces are carved.
No, I don't think so. I think they're leather,
I think they're
as
carved.
as I recall, Jim. As I recall. But you see variations of boots, but this was, to me, this takes the cake of not just your regular cowboy boot. So those are probably, Joanne, are those your fingers, or is that your husband's fingers?
That's my husband trying to hold it up in the sunlight. Yeah, this is my great folly. I took a class up in Port Townsend many years ago from Jay Havoc, and I took several of his Viking carvings. And one day he had, in his slideshow, he had a photo of this, and I just loved it. And this is a copy of an original Viking carving from about the year 1070. And it still exists. It was done in northern white pine, and it was around the doorway of the church. And so it's basically, this is Alaska yellow cedar. It's basically kind of Norse mythology, even though it was on a church, and they argue about what it means. But I think it's kind of a combination of the Celtic interlacing, the European, the little flower-like things are supposed to be fleur-de-lis, so there's a lot of European influence. The Viking parts are the snaky animals. They call this the great beast. They don't know if it was their idea of a lion or what sort of beast it was. But an interesting thing was they did not have dragons in Scandinavian art before Christianity arrived around, I don't know, around the year 1000. I'm not sure when. There was no dragons. They had snakes and serpents, but no dragons. So yeah, this has been a challenge. I routed it out about an inch down, and I've been carving on it for about off and on for about a year and a half. I took 7 months off once because it was just like, I've had enough of this. And it's getting close to being done now, but I have to get some small tools and go in and put some details on the dragon heads and finish a dragon head. It's kind of hard for people to tell what's going on. There's basically this deer-like dragon figure, and then there's 3 of these snaky figures that are all intertwining. And it's I have to be careful not to go down too low, because it makes the wood grain even more difficult to work with when I have it going up and down too much. And the original Viking designs, they kind of press towards the surface. Most of the elements press toward the surface. So I was trying to keep that.
And so that's the detail, sorry, that's the second slide you had. So that's
Yeah.
that's the beast head chomping on the neck while he simultaneously, the enemy is chomping on his neck, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like Ragnarok, the end of the world, and there's a great battle. That is one of the ideas also. And I have to make his eye a little more prominent, but the style was really primitive, so that's just how his eye looked, which I don't really like that eye, but that's how it was. And then I haven't finished rounding the tops of the loops. And the dragon heads, a lot of the dragon heads were destroyed, so I wasn't sure how to do them. And I'm still not sure how to do the dragon heads.
Nobody will know.
Uh,
So, the beast on the bottom, these round circles are the major joints. So there's the one on the left is the hip, and the one on the right is the shoulder, right? For the front
that was the
legs.
style. That was the style they used. They used a great big spiral for the joints. And then of course the under over. And it was supposed to be a mix of some of these are beasts, and some of the beast tails start turning into foliage or fleur-de-lis. And they're not sure if that has something to do with the intersection of Christianity beginning or not, because it's almost 1,000 years old and it's still there. And they cover it with pitch, so it's black and gray. And they still cover it with pitch every so often to preserve the wood. It's the original wood is still on the outside of the church up in Norway.
I would call this mutual assured destruction.
Oh, and it's called the urn style. So it's the last
Urn,
style
right.
of
Okay.
Viking art. It's more kind of graceful and flowing. And after this, that was kind of the end of Viking art.
Is this one piece of Alaska yellow cedar or glued up?
It's 3 pieces glued up. It's a little less than 2 inches thick, and it's let's see, about 42 inches by 15 inches for the design.
And you had it flattened by Northwest Creative, as I recall, to get your basic plank to get started
Yeah,
with.
they glued it up for me.
Yeah. Are any questions for Joanne?
It's going to be a very dramatic accent wherever you put it. You'll get a lot of positive comments. That's great.
Thank you.
How'd you get the depth like between the shapes and then the back part? How'd you get that so deep?
I use a router for the basic shapes, and then I suffered a lot with my chisels. And I had a terrible time. I've been cleaning the background, and then I realized I shouldn't have been doing stop cuts down to the depth when I went around cleaning up the lines, because I kept creating more. I was chopping up the surface background, and then I'd have to clean that up again. So I suppose what I should have done was just not go all the way down and then come through with like a number 11 or a V tool, and then take off the scraps once at the bottom. Maybe that would have been easier, but it's been pretty difficult. I keep buying. I bought myself a Helvey knife 2 weeks ago. And that's been really helpful.
Joanne, what kind of finish are you planning to put on it?
I don't know what to do. I can either leave it plain, and today I was reading about using a beeswax mixed with a little bit of carnauba wax. I haven't tried to sample that though. I tried oiling a piece, and that looked terrible, so I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I'm not sure. So any advice would be welcome.
How was the
Right.
original finished? Any idea? I mean, was it light wood? Was it a dark finish?
It was northern white pine, so it was a light wood with quite a kind of a heavy grain. And they literally put pitch on it because it was outdoors and it preserved it. But it looks nice. You can still see photos of it, still exists. It just looks black and gray. So it looks pretty, but they literally put pitch on it. I don't know how often they do that, but they are still doing that. So that was their finish, was pitch.
I think you might want to attend one of next month's special interest groups for carving where they will be, I'm sure Larry will tell us about this, but it'll be discussing and doing samples of different finishes on the same kinds of woods.
Oh yeah, that would be
But whatever you do on this one, you're gonna want to do on a sample piece first.
Or
definitely.
several sample pieces.
I've used a couple of different kinds of food safe kind of finishes
Yeah.
that bring out the grain and darken the wood just a little bit. Not a lot.
I actually finished I have a butcher block counter in the kitchen and I use that food safe wood finish on
Right.
that. I've got some, so I could try that on a sample.
You might want to, yeah, just on a scrap, see how it looks. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I've done it with bowls, and bowls are not basswood. They were different kinds of wood, and they had a deeper grain and a deeper color. But
Mhm.
that might look good. It's worth a try anyway. Experiment.
Yeah. So it's a cedar, so I guess it would eventually turn gray. I don't know if it would also turn gray if it were indoors. Does anybody know?
Not sure.
Oh.
Whatever you do, Joanne, do the test finishes on a piece of Alaska yellow cedar instead of basswood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's the Noah's Ark that I got in the mail today.
That's it.
Terry, you're up. Terry, you're up.
There are a couple of pieces missing. That was a serial carve that I did over about 6 years, a few pieces a year at Christmas for my wife. And I did the Ark and Noah and Mrs. Noah, whatever her name. I'll call her Mary. No, that's not a good name. That's would compliment. Anyway, it was fun. It's all folk art. Happy, and I wanted to be happy. I found though one of my biggest jobs with this carving collection, this particular one, is repairing the pieces because my grandchildren seem to love these things, and they won't learn the lesson. Every one of them has to break at least one piece before they know they're not indestructible. Anyway, that was a design from Sean Sippa. I have 2 others because I wasn't sure how many animals I wanted to do, and I didn't have good pictures of unusual animals. So I've got a couple of other design books that I've got, but that is done now. This picture's also missing because the paint is drying on 2, a Brahma bull and a cow that I've got right now, and they'll go on there last. They're actually included in this collection was a whale, but I didn't do the whale. He was supposed to be, hanging around, I guess, once they got on dry land, because I had to make it look like either they were getting on the boat or off the boat. So right now they're getting on the boat, I guess. They're all going toward it. But that's my Noah's Ark.
That is really fun.
That's great.
It was. This is something completely different. These are Scandinavian folk art, flat plane carvings. I did I started by doing the fisherman on the left with the pipe and really enjoyed it. And did the captain a few months later. In between that, I taught a class where I did some other pieces altogether, but I kind of thought that the fishermen needed company, so I added that one and just finished that one recently. Jim would appreciate this. He's an old salt. So that is that flat plane carving. Are you familiar with Scandinavian folk kind of art? Yeah. Harley Repsol, I think, was maybe the person that resurrected that in the United States, was more responsible for its popularity now than anybody else. And I enjoy these because they're easy to carve. You can stop. You don't stand until you drive yourself crazy. You don't have to make things smooth and nice. You just leave them rough. And
Is it
that's
mainly a knife and a V tool, Terry?
oh, that's good. I'm glad you said that, Larry. The the style itself specifies that you can only use a knife, one knife. So I used a Schloid knife that was a small one. It was about 3 inches, and that was it. So both of these are carved out of basswood from a single knife, including, and this I stopped doing. I use the V tool now, but that includes on both of them the beards and a little bit of hairline, not much hair, but a little bit of hair, which is really a bugger to carve with just a knife. That's it's good skills practice for all sorts of other carving. So, okay, Larry, any questions on that? I'll wait until the end. Yes. Now I put this one up here because I just finished it. Oh, I don't know, late winter. And I called him the prophet, and I started him at our club picnic in August, I guess, and then let him sit around for a while, so long outside that you can't see it because I finished over it pretty well. But he's got three. There's one right up at the top of his hairline on the left side, where the left bit of hair parts to the right. Anyway, there's staples in there that I I added because he was starting to come apart. I'm afraid it was a crazy piece of wood. I appreciate whoever it was that got it. I think maybe it was Larry that found it. I'm not sure. Was it Larry or Jim?
Yeah, it came out of our neighborhood. It was a fallen, I think it's an ash tree. I don't know
Yeah,
for sure.
I believe that's what it is too. But you don't see it here. But I had to hollow out the back. It's like a small canoe. It was so rotted on the backside that that I took out a third of the wood from that log. That's about 3.5 feet high, I guess, something
Yeah.
like that. I
Well, this
used
started out of
chainsaws.
this. Yeah.
Okay, I
Oh,
used a
sorry, Terry.
small steel chainsaw, 8 inch, I guess, with a quarter tip to rough it. And then I used an angle grinder to take some more of the stuff off. I made the heavy lines then with the skilled saw again. I wanted to try to use the chainsaw as much as I could. And then finished up detail with a die cutter with about with a barrel shaped burr on the end of it, and a cone shaped burr. And then finally some chisels, power chisels. I have a reciprocating tool that you can put blades into, chisel blades. And finally I sanded it, and I think I finished it with spar varnish. About 4 or 5 coats. I just kept putting it on. I was afraid with all that rot on the backside that eventually it would succumb to the forces of nature and fall apart. So I just practically soaked it in spar varnish. No. I like wood spirits. I carve a lot of wood spirits. In fact, one of the classes that I've taught essentially uses that face on a very small cylindrical piece of wood, the typical kind of walking stick sort of wood, 1 inch to 1.25 inches in diameter. So that's the prophet, and finished him recently, very recently.
Terry, going back, I have to say that my eye kept going to the piece to the left, and that
Yeah.
frisky, if not evil expression. Uh, it's pretty neat.
Oh, here's something you can't see because I tried to cover it up, but on the left hand, you mentioned the left, on the left hand side, that eye chipped through as I was carving it with that rotten hollow back, poked right on through. So I covered it up with a little bit of wood putty and tried to darken it up with a Sharpie. And and then I varnished it. So, and evil, yes, he does look a little arch, I guess. Yeah. This is I like to do these because this is maybe the one thing that I don't carve that's planned so much that I lose my muse before I start carving. So this is not over planned. This is even maybe underplanned. It's completely extemporaneous, and it's carved out of cottonwood bark. And a good piece of cottonwood bark has got all sorts of strange areas in it that you don't know exist until you start carving. Now, that being said, you can use cottonwood bark to carve some phenomenal faces. I love the deep, rich color that it has and the finish it'll take. But I also love this, being able to carve just a whimsical, fun thing without really having to think about it too much. This one, as a matter of fact, Jerry probably saw, because I started it. He made some sarcastic comment about it a couple of years ago in a gathering of the guilds thing, because I had brought that as my demonstration carve. And anyway, that's it, Jerry. That's what it looks like when it's done. It looked pretty crude when I started it, when you saw it last 2 years ago, whenever that was. It's hard to see, but here's a cool thing. On the left-hand side, right there, is a funny little knob. Well, that knob started off as a face, and the face was carved down in here, I think, which is going to be kind of recessed in the carving, like a mountain giant, a troll, and it fell out. So I just glued it on the side to see if anybody would recognize that there's a face in the carving. And some people do, actually. When they ask me what the heck a face is doing sticking out of the rock or whatever it is on that side. So I love these little whimsical houses. And of all the things that I've carved, this captures some people. Some people think it's just rubbish, but some people really, really, really like it. And in any kind of sales venue I've ever been in, these always sell. Always, always, always. And I haven't found a good ceiling for the price yet. If I was going to try to do things for money, this would probably be the thing that I do. Anyway.
Yeah, are there any questions for Terry? In the spirit of finding inspiration, my observation is there are, in most clubs, in many clubs, people that all they do is carve cottonwood bark. They just absolutely adore it, love it, as Terry said. They just collect it, and the pieces are individual and inspiring for them. Okay, Jim Spitzer.
Okay, I guess I should have specified to post these backwards, but that's okay because, oh, okay.
I'll go back. This is your
We'll
context.
start it here. Okay, so you can see during the big ice and the windstorm that hit Portland back in January, we had two large cypress trees fall down. In the lower right-hand picture, you can see the trunks of two of them, and both of those were horizontal until we cut the tree off, and the root ball fell back into the hole most of the way. So myself and a couple of neighbors cut all the wood up and loaded it into a truck where guy was going to burn it for firewood, and then we had to pile up all of the branches in preparation for a chipper machine that we hired to come by later. Our homeowners association was going to just hire somebody, a contractor, to do the whole job, and myself and others volunteered to do it. Well, when that stump of the one that's crooked there that has love on it fell back into the hole, I said to the guy with the chainsaw, how about if you just make a seat out of it? And so we made a seat out of it, and the seat, and I took the piece that we cut out and started carving something on it. That will be the next slide. But then I'm looking across the street, and this is about 20 feet off the sidewalk, and I'm looking at that seat, and I'm figuring, well, I can carve something on that. So that is inspired by Robert Indiana, who was a famous artist who came up with the large sculpture Love in that style that sits in Manhattan Island right now, and many prints and whatever have been made of that. He made millions, literally, off of this and some of his other work. And so this land here, there's a little pond off to the right, and it's operated by our homeowners association. So my challenge was, what could I carve on that would not be controversial? So to my knowledge, nobody's taken issue with this so far. A lot of people have said they love it, but it didn't raise the ire of anybody yet, at least not to my knowledge. So I guess we can go on to the next one now. And this is what I did with what we cut out of it. And this was inspired by a book that my book club read several months ago. And it was, the name of the book is How to Be Perfect, the answer to every moral question. And somewhere in one of those chapters, they're quoting something, a saying that was inscribed, carved onto a stone column in a temple in Delphi, Greece, 3,000 years ago. And this is what was carved on it. And those words, for some reason, struck me. And I really have never done anything with letters before. And so I took the letters, I blew them up, and I did some sort of a rough layout. And because I just liked what it said. And both of those things I have yet to get right. I don't know myself, and I have too many things in excess. But maybe that's going to be a reminder. That's going to be outside. It's finished with an outdoor Olympic stain, and it's going to be set outside in my side yard, and not necessarily on public display, because somebody might take offense to that. I don't know. But anyway, it was fun, and I haven't done much carving this past winter. I've been doing some other woodworking projects and many other projects, but that was fallen trees and reading the book club book, and Robert Indiana inspired me to do something with what nature presented.
That's great, Jim. That's great. Any questions for Jim? Like, how did you get it so smooth in the face? Did you plane it, or was that's just a chainsaw?
I had a power. It was rough cut with a chainsaw, and I have a power planer, a hand power planer that I plugged into my neighbor's outlet across the street and smoothed that surface, as well as doing this one in my shop. So I had a flat surface to start with.
Nice. Any questions for them? I'm going to move on to Doug Carlson Swanson. Doug isn't here. When I looked up the participant list, Doug lives near me out in the Beaverton area. Comes over and hangs out in my shop and does things. I don't know all this. He didn't give me all the words. I'm pretty sure we had an over the transom request from a lady who wanted an owl carved for her mother. who loved owls. I'm pretty sure this is the one that came out of that. He had never carved an owl before, and so he tackled it. Doug does a lot of power carving using a micromotor system. And he tends to do smaller things. I think this is about 8 inches, maybe 10 inches tall. I don't know the story of this one. I think this had a history of in his family. He's been carving in a variety of ways, carving comfort animals. This is not quite a comfort turtle, but it's in that same size and same spirit. What's not shown, I had Doug do a prototype of the comfort hedgehog, and at Gathering of the Guild, we'll have, I think, about maybe 8 or 10 of them that came out of the Wood Carving Illustrated book using the maple eggs to start with. And he carved that using the micromotor system. He also likes to carve bears. And these are 3 different instances of bears. The one on the left, coffee cup. Obviously, the one in the middle is the frustrated fisherman. And then the other one is, I can't remember, it looks like a sign. And they're all small. And Doug loves cars, and he does these miniature hot rods in really small pieces. They're almost like matchbook kind of sizes, and then he'll paint them. He also uses airbrush painting, and he gave a demo on airbrushing like last September or so at the Carving SIG meeting, which is very specialized from my own perspective. But I realized that serious bird carvers, serious fish carvers use that equipment for airbrushing to get a certain looks. This is obviously in the raw. So Justin, you're up with your elegant.
Oh yeah. This is a
Good.
cheese board I made. I did it in a Northwest coastal style art, and it's an otter. So I used a piece of slate for the middle section. That's where you'd put your cheeses on when you're having a party. That's I guess about it. It was all just hand tools from a block. I think it was about 8 by 8 inch block of wood that cut down into the 2 separate sections like that.
That's very inspired. Is the slate attached or is it loose?
It's loose. It just lifts up and down straight from the 2 halves there.
Okay.
I wanted it that way so I could clean it off after a cheese party.
And how did you finish?
Actually right now it's not finished. So
Ah.
that's the last thing I gotta do is I gotta put just a sealer on top of it so my wife can actually use it.
And Justin, were you inspired by some similar thing done by a native carver, or did obviously you know the form? It looks like you have the proper elements of Northwest coastal art in there, so you know the form. But was there some particular thing that inspired you on this?
I was actually, so I just moved back to Portland from Seattle, and so I was taking classes up there from a carver who does a lot of Northwest coastal art. And so this was the 3rd project I've carved. I've been carving for about a year and a half, probably. The first one was like a flat panel, kind of coastal art. And then the second was like a 3-dimensional owl. And so for the 3rd project, I just wanted to make up something on my own. And I still just like the coastal art style. So I wanted to come up with something on my own, but use the same style. So I drew this up on some paper, and my instructor at the time helped me figure out how to make it so it actually work as a carving as well. And then this is what I came up with.
That's very nice.
Well, now that you're down in Portland, you have another master carver of the Northwest coastal native art down here, Adam McIsaac up in La Center, who's taught some courses for us. And
Oh,
you
really?
might be able to get in contact with him and see his great shop. Joanne and a couple of others in the guild have taken courses from him.
Okay, awesome. What was the name again?
Adam
Adam
And I think, is he one of the carvers of note on our website yet, Larry?
Yeah, he's up. He gave a talk maybe 2 years ago. All of the past monthly programs are recorded on the website, and they've been uploaded to our YouTube channel. So if you go to the YouTube channel and go to Oregon Carvers Guild, you can kind of rummage through them, or go to our own website and scroll reverse chronological order. He did quite a great shop tour. Jim helped organize that, of course, and coordinated the classes. And
Awesome.
the shop he's a delightful guy, and he's been at it 30 years, but his focus is on Columbia River Basin, the southern tribal kind of art, which
Okay.
he was warned to stay away from because it's too spiritual. He said, you're going to run into trouble. But he's got a whole story that is quite remarkable.
And it's interesting that he's basically accepted by the leaders of tribes like the Chinook. And so it's not even though he's of European heritage, he's not considered as one doing cultural appropriation, because he's been doing this he's probably in his early 50s. He's been doing it for over 30 years.
Yeah.
So
And Justin,
Justin, what kind of animal is that?
What kind of, it's a otter.
I thought that's what it's the pose more than the actual similar, with an otter laying on its back, cracking a shell open on its belly. That's what I see. That's great.
Thank
Very
you.
good form. That's what I thought it was. Cool.
And Justin, when we communicated, I think I passed the name of Dick Wilkes to you.
Yeah, both him and
Good.
Adam looks
Yeah.
like, so thank you
Yeah.
all. Look them up.
Yeah. I'm gonna switch gears. Any questions for Justin? Nice work. The Mesa show is in Jerry Boone's backyard. Jerry's had what 4 entries this year in it. I've always wanted to go. I finally eked out some time to go. I can't do it justice, but it was a great show this year for me to see what another major carving show would look like. I took a lot of videos, I took some pictures, and I just kind of put together my favorites. Had I had more time this last couple of weeks, I would have put more together. And I've got probably 500 megabytes worth of stuff. So if anybody wants to dive into this, let me know. This is I think it's the advanced group, Jerry. This is the sort of the best of the group. This is a 1-minute video. So let me just, what's interesting to me about this particular piece, a lot of relief carvings are plain finished. They're not painted. But I'm seeing more and more highly painted relief carvings, and the fact that this won first place in this category for me, I thought was quite interesting. This other one caught my fancy. I saw this box on the floor, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was. So I did an interview. I don't know how the audio is going to turn out. The bottom line is this is a carving case with a leather apron stapled to it or nailed to it on the back. And he carves and drops all of his chips in that box. So I did a little interview. You may or may not be able to get the audio.
I think so. Yeah. And like I said, when I just vacuum it out, but what happens, Dan says, hey, you need to go vacuum out your box. And so I'll just stick them. Yeah. Well, yeah, on the couch or whatever.
So you just drop it all, you just let the chips fall.
They fall in here.
Right
like I
there.
say, I don't make that big a mess.
Yeah.
Once in a while, a couple go over the side, but not too much.
I'm taking a video. And where are you from and what's your name?
My name is Dan Nunes. I live here now. I retired at the end of last January.
Where'd you move from?
Across the Bay, in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Oh, San Francisco
California.
Bay. Yeah. Okay. And what's your favorite knife of all those?
It depends on what I'm doing. This one I use a lot because I've been carving pumpkins. This one I use a lot for pumpkins. It's one I make.
Really? So it's a small detail knife.
Yeah.
Looks like.
Yeah. It's got that edge there. It's real good for like getting in here and you can get it here. You can cut one side, but not the other. So, yeah, I like this one a lot.
How about
But then again, I can say you can't really have a favorite. It depends on what you're doing at the time. And I probably have a lot more knives here than I actually need.
Well,
But, you
that's
know.
the common disease, right?
I know.
The real-
And like I say, a lot of them I've made myself. So
I'm trying to help beginners figure out which few knives to buy to begin with. What would your
Yeah.
recommendation be?
I used to do a lot of carving shows, and basically every time I go to show, I buy a knife. And we had a guy who we called him. Let's see, this one and this one here. That was his mark. This square box piece thing. He had a really heavy Russian accent, and we just nicknamed him Crazy Ivan. But he used to make all his own knives, and when you bought a knife from him, he told you the story about what kind of steel it was and everything, how he tempered it. But those are good knives. So, and that probably.
Did you ever try gill drake knives? You ever use drake
Oh
knives?
yeah, I got some gills. In fact, there's some of my favorite little detail knives. Where's it at? That's the problem. Is it's amazing I can lose a knife.
Somewhere. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a gill.
I love
That's
that
one
handle.
of gills.
Yeah,
I love that knife. In fact, it's got kind of. It used to have more of a rounded edge. I've sharpened it so many times. In fact, that's what. And the fact that and this was a gill knife too, but I've sharpened it down so much, and that's what probably inspired me to start making my own.
yeah. How about Helvey knives? You
Huh?
use- How about
No, I
Helvey?
don't have any Helveys.
Helveys?
No,
Yeah.
but I've got a lot of. I've got a few Denny knives.
Oh yeah.
Those are good knives. They're not very expensive, but they're good knives. And like I said, and I see why with them that inspires me to make.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it. It's pretty much at the end. I was intrigued by the notion. He's got both a carrying, he's got his case for organizing his tools, plus he just drops his chips right in the bottom of them. And so his wife doesn't complain too much when he's carving inside. This other project is one that, this was at the show. It was a Sean Sippa design out of his book, and I put the reference on the bottom on carving gargoyles, grotesques, and other creatures of myth. It was a door knocker, and what appeals to me is making functional art, things that I can actually do something. So, you know, Justin's cheese tray floats my boat personally, but having a door knocker, one of my favorite doors I've ever seen is in Bend, Oregon, at Broken Top. They have I was at a wedding and they had a function there, and they have 2 carved doors at the country club, and it's just astounding. I've always aspired to doing something for my own door, and this looks for me something that could get into reach. So I put that on my wish list of projects to carve in power carving and a hardwood. I'd love to do the knocker in ebony to kind of give it a hardwood, a harder sound. I've got the book. He's got a 4-page article on how to do it. And he actually laminates the knocker part in 2 pieces, kind of makes a two-ply plywood, if you will, in order to strengthen the cross grain, the short grain, so it doesn't break. I assume I don't know what the wood is. It's got some tint on it. This is not a wood carving. It was so stunning as a piece of art. This is a little video. I interviewed the woman. It lasts for about a minute. And can anybody guess what was that made out of? It turns out to be a lot of different things, but mainly it's gourds cut and glued together. Someone just start the video and I'll stop it. It's only about a minute long.
Well, this is Jennifer Shue of Gold Canyon. And what is this, Jennifer?
This is a dragon made out of gourds. There's 6 gourds that make it all together. There's one inside the head to support everything. There's the back is a gourd. The seed pods are from a yucca plant. The fiber is from the inside of a prickly pear cactus. The desert wood, I just go out in the desert and find something that really looks gnarly. It has color shifting paint on it so that when you move, it changes colors. And this is from the inside of a palm leaf.
Inside of what?
A palm leaf.
common.
Yeah, I shredded it. So I love texture. So that's what I'm aiming for all the time.
So what is your background that would allow you to create that kind of thing?
I'm a potter.
A potter? Really?
Yes.
How did you come up with this idea?
I was given the gourd body on a different gourd, a different dragon, because this is my second one. That was given to her by a friend that passed away. And the friend was an artist, and she wanted to make the gourd into a dragon. So when she gave it to me, I figured if it wanted to be a dragon, I'll make it into a dragon. So that's what was my starting point.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'll stop there. She painted it with some kind of iridescent paint. So when you move around, you actually get a different sense of the tone. And I realize it's not wood carving, but I'm interested personally, you'll see examples elsewhere of non-wood material and combining some of these things. Dave Rushlow was a name that I didn't know up until about 3 months ago. He lives in the area, in Mesa area. He's so well known that in mid-1985, he was teaching all over the West. He would go up to the National Carvers Museum and teach at their summer camps near Colorado Springs. So here he is. I think he's 91 years old now, cranking this stuff out. I think he said he had 5 or so carvings and caricature carvings in this particular show itself, and this was one that I spotted. I interviewed him for a different reason related to the National Carvers Museum. And this is kind of in the spirit of what Jerry did for a carving cottage, except here we have a carver working at a workbench and doing this whole the thing. And these are just a montage of the individual pictures. It looks like to me the carver is a bit of flat plane on the shoulders, but not all flat plane. The lower right, you notice he carved the chair. I don't know, looks butternuttish kind of things, and I don't know how he did the individual pieces. And I was struck by that. There's probably 30 or 40 other carvings that would be worth putting together in a Mesa show. I just didn't have time to get them together. If anybody wants to take a look at it, let me know. I've got lots of raw material. The Idaho show, the Idaho group does a combined show. I thought it was the Carvers Guild and the Gourd Society partnering together to do the show, but it turns out the woodturners are there, and they also have some more classical, what we would consider Gilded and woodworker groups. So they're of different stages. My daughter lives in Boise. I had her take the photos this last weekend, and so I pulled out what I thought would be interesting, kind of different things that would not be sort of typical. This is a miniature carousel. The Albany carousel has a version of a more sophisticated version that's an antique. But there's a group that I ran across called the Carousel Modelers and Miniatures Association. And they have been around for decades, and they're an old dying group, but an interesting group of people. And they're deeply embedded in the carousel world. So you can see how carving miniature horses on an actual operating mechanism might work and inspire people. So you don't have to deal with the huge efforts of making a full-size carousel. There's a couple of examples of gourd art, and I first heard about gourd art through the Central Coast woodcarvers in California. Scott Lang, who's the president, and Dot Rigg were big into gourd art, gourd carvings, where it's both carving and painting and wood burning, all 3 of them combined. And the one on the left is the full object, and the one on the right, and these next 3 pictures are that same models. Obviously a floral pattern, and then one that's cut out a lot. They obviously pierced I assume that looks like a Japanese maple leaf, and then use the designs, a lot of holes drilled, I assume, maybe carved, maybe power carved, and then highly painted. I assume the lines are wood burned on these, but I don't know for sure. Oh, there's the fourth one. I did not see any of these other than the pictures my daughter took. My experience, I've sat in on some of the meetings they've had online at in Idaho. They seem to have a really broad and deep set of carvers there, with really a lot of really extraordinary talent. This one caught my attention. I don't know if you look at the central dolphins jumping out of the wood, you could say, well, were those added on? I'm guessing, but I don't know. But that whole motif kind of thing looks quite interesting. Eric Owens is a caricature carver. He was a speaker for us about 2 years ago. And we tried to get a caricature class pulled together about a year and a half ago, and it didn't fly because we couldn't get enough people. But maybe someday he'll be able to come. He teaches caricature carving online. He's got a free YouTube channel for some of the stuff, but eventually he wants to build a school, an online school and an online following. That's one example. There are two different examples of fish carving. In an analog of carving mammals or carving birds or carving fish, or by example, carving cottonwood bark. Some people, that's all they do is carve fish, and they highly paint them. And so that, and I say that because one of the fish carvers in the central Oregon area passed away, and his state donated his set of tools, they're power carving tools and finishing tools and paints. So if anybody is interested in pursuing fish carving, let me know, because we have some resources available. This one seems to be highly painted. But if you look at the quality and the shading of the painting that goes into that, I don't know in this particular case, it's not, I assume this is a piece of found wood for the base. But my understanding is that for competition fish carving, you actually have to carve all of the found environment. There are a few exceptions in the bird carving world about using metal and epoxy for forming the legs. This does not look carved, but I don't know that for sure. I assume the fish is. It's just caught my attention. This is a walking stick, and it looks like it has a lot of deep carving on it, and it caught my attention. There's details on the right. You'll see in the next example in Salem that there's, in the world of carving, there's room for gourds, artists, and there's room for pyographers. The piece of wood on the left was found wood that was both burned and colorized. And the detail on the right is an explosion of the detail of the bird on the left side piece of that. I think it's pretty extraordinary. The Salem show is every April, and they were able to restart last year after COVID. So this was the second year. They meet at a really nice facility called Center 50 Plus. It's a Marion County or City of Salem retirement center. And the room divides down the center, and the room on the right is where the group meets every month, the last Tuesday of the month. I joined that club, and I try to go down for most of the meetings. They open that space up and have their annual show. It was very dense. They had a lot of carving things going on. I've taken a few examples of that. Barbara Fromhertz and her husband, Don Fromhertz, were leaders. Don was the president and Barbara was the secretary. Barbara does biography, and this piece she had been working on and showed the work in process over the last several meetings, and I thought it was just stunning, and it won one of the prizes. These next pieces are all award winners at the show. There was another, I don't know Donna, but she also did this one, but an example of shading as opposed to painting. Tim Flora does relief carving. He's had a number of them. The interesting thing about both this one and the next is that they jump out at you. There's a, I forgot the guy's name. He wrote a book and developed a video on how to draw in perspective and how to, in shallow relief, how to get this to pop out. And the fact that he's got this really interesting frame, I think adds to the theme. This was another example. I thought this was intarsia at the first. When I asked him, he said, no, it's all one piece of wood, all carved, and yet it still kind of replicates the intarsia kind of a look. Cheryl Ayers was one of Jeff Harness's students, along with Jerry Boone and myself. She carves a lot of birds, and she hasn't been carving that long, and that's extraordinary, I think. There's this number of caricatures all here from Terry Moss. Terry Moss is the president of the Salem Club. His brother Clark Moss lives in Portland and is now the co-leader of the carving SIG for us in the evening carving SIG. This one I think Terry did about a year ago. He called it the airplane flight from hell. If you can count the number of pieces individually carved, so the guy in the lower left is about ready to puke. The guy in the middle center is drunk. The guy in the far right is crazy. He's trying to open the door. And the kid in the middle in the front seat is forever talking and yakking and disturbing everybody in the back. I think every single character has kind of a piece of that story, but it's a montage. So it goes like carving one piece is hard enough, yet carving the scenery, carving a scene is quite interesting. He has another one. I forget what he calls this one, but 3 different characters playing poker. There was a number of examples on this table. This is the montage of a number of them. The sunburst one I thought was an interesting painting job that just is bright and just stands out, and obviously has a happy looking face. There's a dragon that primarily put this in for Diana Larrabee in our club, who loves everything dragons. It's not very big. It seemed like to be about 6 inches across, but I thought really nicely done with texture on the tail. I'm not into fish, but I assume these are angel fishes, but that's probably not the correct name, but he spent time with that. This is the Sean Sippa gargoyle out of the book. So in that book that I referenced for the door knocker, this is one of, I think, about 4 or 5 projects in the book. And the guy's table was Rick Bittner, but I don't know him, but I think the woman that was in the first slide carved it because I talked to her, and she had actually carved the door knocker as well. This is, you'll see Terry Moss in the background eating pretzels as we go through. These caricatures on the back are his 2x2 by 12-inch high pieces. These all following a theme. So this last class he did for us were the center ones, the leprechaun and the male and female rabbits. The male painting on an egg, and the woman bunny rabbit carrying a bag of eggs. The 2 on the left will be the basis, 2 of the choices for the summer class that he's teaching up here at the end of July. This is a short video.
How do you have a life carving?
Well, I've used basswood the most.
Somebody always wants to buy those.
Yes, Terry munching away. So he did in I think November he did the Santa theme classes, and what he's discovered is not so obvious. It's obvious is that if you put the hands in the pockets, you save a lot of time. So you don't have to carve the hands. So you notice the Santa on the right and the one in blue, I guess all three of them have, on the right have their hands invisible. But he started, on the other one, he's not showing hands. So he's got Willy Wonka and Uncle Sam and Frankenstein, and he's got a whole sequence of things that'll evolve out of this. And next year for Thanksgiving, there'll be a pilgrim kind of a theme. The club, we do comfort birds. They do Christmas ornaments. Throughout the year, they crank out and encourage all their members to do ornaments, and they sell them and raise money for the club. This is just a short montage of that table that's set up. Some are chip carved, obviously, some are not. A lot of painting. I assume the one that on the far first side, that probably was the same carver did all the Santas. It looks like they're all the generic ones. Cheryl Ayers is, so what the sign says, she's the novice carver of the year 2023. And I don't consider her a novice, but.
Yeah, you can wear the ashes of your loved one. Yeah. People treat those ashes like they're gold. I know it.
Mammals and birds, and that is the end. And again, I've got a lot more slides, that photos from that show, if anybody's interested in taking a look at them. And Doug, I just saw that you were here. I didn't notice that you were here earlier. And Jason Evans, who is on the call, at least blanked. Jason lives south of Salem. It's an officer of the Salem Club. So that's it for the show and tell for this season. Does anybody have any comments or questions or things they'd like to?
That's very good.
before we-
Very good, very inspiring, and thank you, everybody who contributed. Thank you, Larry, for putting it together, given all that is going on in your and Sherry's life right now.
Yeah. What Jim didn't say is actually this idea came out of Jim. He didn't say this as such, but over the last couple of months, he was saying, I'm not doing any carving, I'm looking for inspiration. I'm not doing any carving, I'm looking for inspiration. So the question is, where does inspiration come from? Sometimes it's a deadline, right? Sometimes it's a gift we have to make, but sometimes we just wake up in the middle of the night and say, hey, I want to do that. And in your case, Jim, the book club gave you an idea. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Okay, so let's wrap it up. Thank you all for hanging around and for participating. I appreciate it very much. So the recording will get posted within the next week, and it'll be archived if anybody wants to look at it. But if you want to dig down into any of the other three shows, there's a massive amount of resources around, as well as a lot of books, of course. Okay, thanks all. See ya. Take care.
Thanks, Larry.